Hi, I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor-at-large of CBSMoneyWatch.com, and I'm joined by
Jack Otter, executive editor of CBSMoneyWatch.com.
and special guest star Matthew Rothenberg, MoneyWatch.com's career management blogger. He's a career advice veteran and a co-author of an excellent book called You're Better Than Your Job Search. That's your real-world guide. Like, you know, you also, I feel like it's a very empowering message.
Exactly.
Right?
I think so, too.
And so right now we have a lot going on in the labor market. Let's be honest, guys. We've got big jobs report that's coming out on Friday. And we have President Obama who says that he's going to unveil some massive plan to spur job growth. Jack, what can he do? I'm
glad I'm not President Obama right now, I'll tell you that. You know, this is such a politically charged issue. I can't even answer the question without pissing off exactly 50% of the country. But I will
do it.
I'm going to do it anyway and say that, you know, I think the initial stimulus plan was very effective in saving us from going over the cliff. Obviously, it didn't solve the problems, but it shouldn't have been sold as something that would. What it did was it stopped the car right before it went off into the water in the rushing rivers of Vermont or whatever. Now, at this point, the economy is just bad, okay? It's not terrible. It's not awful. I mean, it feels like that out of a job, but by historical proportions, we're not quite in recession. We're not in a depression, but it's bad, and there's not that much the government can do at that level. I mean, we could throw more, I guess a WPA for solar panels, and that might help a bit.
Right, they get 5,000 jobs out of that.
Yeah,
perfect.
but what can you do? And then cutting taxes, I mean, that's what the other side says. Well, we tried that in 2003, and here we are. So
how about some sort of job incentive where they pay employers to hire folks? I always like that if they say you have to hire someone who's been out of work for more than 99 weeks.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Like, okay, two things at once.
Well, there could be in that direction. Now, this new guy, how do you pronounce his name? Kruger? He's not even new yet. He's the appointee.
Alan Kruger.
The nominee, I should say, to run the Council of Economic Advisors.
Right, taking over for Austin Goolsbee.
Yeah, which is fun to say. And he was a behavioral economics guy, so we like him. But anyway, one of his arguments is that we ought to be giving a tax break to employers for hiring. So I wouldn't be surprised if Obama tries that. Right.
And Matthew, right now in sort of like you're plugged into the employment market. Tell us kind of what's going on. I mean, how do you think that people are doing? I hear about a lot of folks who are landing jobs in the last 3 months, even though August has been a crazy month. But I would say a couple of months prior to that, I did start to hear people saying they were getting jobs again.
It's interesting. Yeah, I have heard anecdotally there's been some hiring. It does seem like there are signs of life there. We're just not seeing the market roaring back. It still takes some work to get back on track at this point.
Do you think that we're just, I mean, I hate this term new normal, but are we at a different, shouldn't our expectations be lower? I mean, we had this kind of horrible Great Recession. And all the research kind of points to the fact that when you have a big fat asset bubble that's blown up with a big fat credit bubble and that both of them collapse, you've got many years of subpar growth. And we know in the first half of the year, the U.S. economy only grew by 0.7%, so less than 1%. I don't know if I can get anyone to call that a recession or not. It doesn't even matter. It's too close to zero or minus for me. And in that environment, why would an employer hire?
Well, so obviously, the best reason to hire is if you can grow the business. If you don't see value, if it's not going to drive revenues, it certainly takes away a lot of the motivation to be growing your employee base, which is why we're seeing this sort of jobless recovery going on.
Yeah, whatever you're being paid, the business has to make a lot more than that in order to justify your existence.
Exactly.
I mean, there's the 30% that you cost that you don't see, that they pay for your benefits. Mm-hmm. So add that to your salary. They have to make more than that off of every hire to make it worthwhile. And right now, we're not seeing revenue growth. Profits are booming. But in a lot of sectors, the revenues are not there. And that means that they are booming their profits by getting leaner and meaner, not by actually selling more stuff.
So let's get to some questions from people who are looking for work. And Ron starts us off, and he says, I've heard this too. Is it true that it's easier to find a job when you have a job?
It's absolutely easier to find a job if you have a job.
Because are you tainted? Like, oh, you're out of work. You're like, I mean, even after the recession?
So we've talked about candidate forgiveness. people are aware, employers are aware that folks do, in these kind of economic times, go through periods where they're unemployed for a long time. There are extenuating circumstances. If you can tell a good story, it can help a lot. But there's no getting around the fact that some employers will out and out advertise that they are only going to consider candidates who are employed. So how's that for a catch-22?
That is rough. By the way, there's some questions in the chat room with big topics or that rumors that unemployed and those over 50 can't get hired. Now, it's interesting because in the recession, Jack, people over 50 actually did better than the younger ones. Like the older employees did well, but when you lose your job and then are looking for a job, boy, it is hard to get hired when you're over 50.
Yeah, you're probably getting paid a lot more. And there's also, of course, and this is not new. I mean, there are sort of hidden prejudices against older people. Oh, they can't adapt. Oh, they can't jump on things. Now, of course, I can't speak to earlier eras when I wasn't there, but it is true now that job descriptions are awfully fuzzy. People who are locked into a certain role, no matter what their age, are not going to succeed in this job market. I saw somebody griping recently that that's not in my job description. There's no such thing. The only way you even, it used to be you only got ahead by going outside of your job description. I think today the only way you stay stable is by going beyond your job description and doing whatever you have to do. So there are all this sense that older people aren't going to fit that mold. And so if you are in that position, you have to make clear that you're tech savvy, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to succeed, that your experience has been getting companies through downturns before, and therefore you're more valuable than a Gen Xer who just says, hey, that's not my job, I'm going home.
Whether it's fair or not, these are the realities.
This is why my friend who's a hairdresser says that men want their hair dyed, because they don't want to seem over 50.
Yeah, I just heard from, one of my friends was saying he should have used a little more Grecian formula before that.
Well, Robert in the chat room says that unemployed need not apply. They run credit checks for jobs that really have no relation to finance, and then there's the age problem. Nicola says, hey, the recession isn't over yet. I think for a lot of people that is absolutely true, especially if you don't have a job. Thank you very much. And, a lot of people, Robert chimes in again that there are those who discount others who are self-employed. Like self-employed is not a business in and of itself. Like, well, you haven't had a job. You just had to be self-employed, right?
Well, I think what Matthew hit it earlier, he said you got to tell a good story. So it's not merely being self-employed. It's being able to say, here's how I innovated. I went from nothing to something this way. Just imagine what I can do with your company's resources behind me.
Right.
So is that easy? Of course not. But it's not even easy we say it might be easier for someone with a job to get a job, but it's not as if those people who have jobs are getting inundated by headhunters these days.
Well, Kathleen says says that she's not so sure because sometimes when she goes out on an interview, because she already has a job, people are like looking at her like, why are you here then? Like, you're lucky enough to have a job. Is that the case, Matthew?
Well, once again, you're going to have to be able to tell. I mean, this all comes down to the narrative every time, and you need to be able to tell it quickly and with some snap. Like, why are you in my office? And what value are you going to bring to me?
Okay, wait a second. George says, okay, you can only tell a good story when you have an attentive audience.
That's true.
I like that. That's very
true.
Good. It was funny. Here comes Robert. It would be nice to tell an employer how one innovated if that employer would simply reply.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very difficult question. How about this idea? We always get this question, so let's get it out of the way. 1-page resume, 2-page resume.
So if you've got perhaps less than 5 years experience, you should keep it to a page. If you're in the middle of your career, for almost everybody, we're going to do 2 pages. If you've got a very specialized career with a lot of publications, something academic, something very technical, or perhaps you're in the CEO office or the C-suite, you might push it beyond that, but try to keep it to 2 pages.
One thing on the innovation front I can say, and unfortunately my experience is largely limited to not just journalism, but sort of the greater media world. But what I am seeing is an awful lot of freelancing. And I think that's not just because it's media. I think it's because companies are outsourcing. They don't want to pay full-time employees, but they need work done, and so they hire freelancers. So whether you start up a freelancing operation that enables you to actually bring in people, so you're keeping the high margin business and farming out the lower wage stuff, or whether it's just, any port in a storm, find somebody who's got a lot of freelance work and get them to throw you some, and then you'll have something to show for your time.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's absolutely true. Misrepresenting yourself is a mistake, a tactical error. Saying that you're the CEO of your consulting firm
Jack Otter Inc.
is, that sort of inflation doesn't help.
My father called it Reddo.
Yeah.
Otter backwards. Yeah. But
okay. So you want to make sure you don't oversell it. But you also want to say, hey, no, I'm doing stuff. Here's the things that I've done.
Exactly.
Right.
People take that seriously.
Absolutely. Here's a question from Ron, who said that, he was a VP of a large company. They had a reduction in force. He says, a year later, I hear you wouldn't be happy in taking a position lower than you had in the past. And he's like, you know what? I want a freaking job.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that?
Well, first of all, you should identify the things about this other opportunity. Once again, I'm going to say what I always say when I come in here is I realize that for anybody who's looking for a job, it is about you. But for the employer, it's not about you. It's about the value that you're going to bring to them. Mm-hmm. Now, what you've got to be able to sell in that case is, here is how I can come in and nail this. It's an opportunity to come in, bring value to a new field, perhaps. Mm-hmm. I'm super powered in certain areas, and this also gives me an opportunity for growth in others.
All right, here we go, Jack. Here's a good question from Jason in the chat room. If my boss and I are both concerned that someday soon we'll be laid off, who do we talk to about it, and who are we selling ourselves to? Like, we're worried about that. There's instability in the organization.
Sure.
So what do you do?
Well, yeah, that's there are many different versions of that situation, but let's take the mercenary one first, okay? Let's say that the higher ups are looking at his division and thinking, we got to trim costs here. I suspect his boss is paid more than he is. So tactically, one of the things he's got to do quietly, without being a you-know-what about it, is make it clear to everybody that he can handle those tasks that his boss is now doing. And I'm not suggesting you undermine the guy by any means, but you got to pay your mortgage first. Mm-hmm. So make it clear that you're a capable guy and you can handle whatever's thrown at you.
Right.
Number two, if you can, maybe you have a great relationship with your boss and you say, wow, we're in trouble here. What value does our division bring to this company? How can we make ourselves a great team that will prove invaluable?
And I think that's important because a lot of people always feel insecure and you want to prove your value. And I guess at the end of the day, if you say, here's my value, and your boss says still doesn't value it, then you got to go out and pound the pavement and start looking. And that's the issue. So here's a question from Stephanie, who's been out of work for over a year. And we know that long-term unemployment is a huge problem in this country. There's just scads of people, and these 99ers, folks who have exhausted their 99 weeks of unemployment, really hurting. Stephanie says she was downsized a year ago, and now she has a huge gap of time on the resume. Not unlike a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I'm busy researching jobs, taking the opportunity to stay busy volunteering, having gainfully employed. How do I describe the past year on my resume without it seeming sketchy?
I want to know what she's been volunteering at.
How about her kids' schools?
Well, I want to know what she's been doing at her kids' schools.
Okay.
I think that I know that having spoken with leaders in the talent acquisition market, mm-hmm. that they say that this is an absolutely legitimate thing to put on your resume and present it as a job. Once again, don't misrepresent that you've been compensated for it. But if you've reworked the bookkeeping system for the school district as a volunteer, that's an important financial function that you've brought value. There's a story there.
Here's a question for you: should you work for free if in an industry that you want to be in? You're out of work. Should you? Let's call it an internship. This is a question that John is asking. Does it make sense to stay connected to the industry by working for free? It just feels so bad to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather volunteer in something. Maybe it's not the exact business, but
I think it depends on the job. Are you the mailroom clerk at William Morris or the mailroom clerk at Pepsi, right? So nothing wrong with Pepsi, but that's not the ladder to the top. And in other industries, maybe just being there will get you your big break, right? So I think it really depends on what the job is. And maybe you can somehow get your teeth into that paid position or that unpaid position that enables you to go to the competition, right? I mean, they can't ask too much of you if you're unpaid. If you're giving them the 8 hours, well, work hard to figure out how you can grab that client for yourself, or whatever it is. Just don't be a jerk about it, but look out for number one and just only the opportunity. What
by
can
the
I
way,
steal
Jack,
from
someone's
this position?
like, yeah, so you just want me to throw someone under the bus, right? And you're saying, yeah, you have to be a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't think, there are different paths to getting ahead, and some involve literally stepping on, or not literally, but stepping on people's heads, and others just mean carving out something for yourself. And so it's the latter approach. You don't have to be a jerk about it, because, if you're unemployed, you're not really in a position to burn bridges, right? So actually you don't want to piss people off, but you need to think entirely, what's in it for me? And if there's nothing in it for you, then no, you don't want that unpaid position. But if you can get a skill, get a client, kiss butt, maybe somebody leaves the job, you're already there.
Right. And at least you have a password into the system. That's what I figure.
Yeah.
By the way, Kathy asked a question, again, getting back to that over 50 question. What about removing dates on your graduation dates?
Absolutely. Please.
Yeah.
Please. Take it off.
1987 for me. Horrible. I mean, but it's true.
Take it off.
People can do math.
Yeah, you absolutely want to remove those dates. And you
know
wanna,
what a big trigger is also is when they want to go to. Yeah, I went to Radcliffe. If you're calling it Radcliffe, that's a bad sign. Just change it to Harvard. If you went to Barnett at a certain time, or you went to Pembroke, just change it. Change to Brown.
And if you had the Cyndi Lauper theme dance at your school,
nice. I love that. You know what? You're dating yourself.
Talking about it.
You're old, so you can remove those dates.
So his
Yes,
father told him that
absolutely.
story.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Girls just want to have fun. Remember that.
Cut it back. Once you get to 15 years, just list the accomplishments. Don't list the dates.
Okay. And what about this nonsense? I shouldn't say nonsense, but what about the other stuff, other interests? What do you think about that on the resume?
It's got to be truly extraordinary. It's got to be something that's really going to contribute to the job.
Yeah. I play bridge is good for an options trader.
Sure.
That's a very
Yep.
good one. Excellent at craps. Very. But I mean, should you put down that you are the president of your temple?
That one could open a can of worms.
Yes, I really want to work for the anti-Semite who wouldn't hire me because I'm the president of the
Well,
temple.
you know what, though? This is yet another example of customizing your resume. I mean, let's face it. You happen to know that the guy to whom you're applying is big in his temple, or, it's the Michael Millikan Institute. You want a job there. You throw that in.
Okay, but I thought Eric Schoenberg was Jewish, and he wasn't. And I made a joke about being Jewish, and he looked at me. He was like,
it's not that these.
You got to have good intelligence.
That's
Sorry,
right.
Chuck,
That's right. I didn't have.
Do your research,
Who
babe.
could imagine a guy named Schoenberg? Anyway, but I screwed that up.
It's not that they're anti-Semitic or that there's prejudice there. It also comes. This comes with the territory. Let me just give a free piece of advice. Don't include a photo with your resume. Just because HR doesn't want to take on the exposure to any possibility of a bias suit.
Now,
so those things are kind of off the map because
George says he's in the chat room. Says that companies have begun to require dates on
Really?
of employment and on. I mean, they don't have to require dates on your education, though.
Not only
isn't
that,
a
I
bad
suspect
question?
that's going to be in the last 10 or 15 years where Matthew's saying you do want it on.
Yep.
And you don't want to be in a position where, you don't have the right date for that position you left 2 years ago, because then they get suspicious. Like, is he not telling us the full story here? But at the same time, in the early stages of the interview, they don't care whether you left that job 20 years ago or 19 years ago.
Hey, by the way, this is awesome. Here's a Mark who says, for LinkedIn, keep a general resume posted under a pseudonym. And he says, you want to know what's going on in your industry.
oh, that's
That's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
I love that.
First time
Editor
I've heard
at
that one.
MoneyWatch. Oh wait, not MoneyWatch. No. That's a pretty good idea, right?
Yeah, that is.
I
that's
love
a
that
very
one.
interesting idea.
Fantastic.
Of course, yeah. Then that person gets a great job offer, and you're like, no, that's me.
That's really
Right.
Oh,
How do you do
Oh,
that?
you were lying and dissembling
Right.
in LinkedIn? Yeah, we're not interested in you.
Yeah, there is that problem. Monica writes, I graduated in 2003 with a BA in Psych from SUNY Buffalo. Monica. This is not going to be a good story. Anyway, she's held positions as a counselor, coordinator, teacher for high school students, but she realized that being confined to a classroom, not a good fit. I acquired temp positions as an employment associate, data analyst with my former employer, the Office of Child Support Enforcement of New York City. Contract ended in May. I'm seeking employment in various fields. So I have to admit I have a small network. She's young, right? She's been out of school a few years. Because I've held numerous positions, my vast skill set, I think we might be overstating that, vast skill set, will it be overlooked, red flagged? What should I do? I think the bigger question is, if you're young and you've taken a bunch of jobs, you've cobbled together whatever this is, path of your career, how do you present that in a cohesive way?
Well, cohesive is the key. I mean, whether you're early in your career, whether you are doing some contract work between engagements, whether you decided to strike out on your own and now you're coming back into a corporate setting, the key is to put those things into some cohesive themes. It sounds like she's developed some competencies that she can sell to a company. Put those all under one heading. Right. Yep. And try not to be too scattered about it.
Okay.
And sounds like she might not be that focused.
Right.
Yet on one. You need a short list of target companies, I think, in her situation.
Right.
One bit of advice one thing I don't want to hear from her ever in an interview situation is she says the classroom was not a good fit. That may be true. I don't want to hear about anything that wasn't a good fit. I want to hear I learned X, Y, and Z in the classroom, and now I'm taking that to the next level.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
No, because I'm not going to hire somebody who had a fit problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How much of technological developments change employee screening, asks Mr. Chad.
Run that
how
by me
much
again.
have technological developments changed employee screening?
It's changed it radically. The whole notion of back in the old days, you'd mail in your resume, a human being would open it, read it, and accept or discard it. At this point, any company of size is using an applicant tracking system to screen out the first round of resumes. So they're processing. You are not only a human being. Before you're a human being to them, you're a data point. It's a very different landscape. You've got to understand. You got to look at the keywords on those job descriptions. You've got to match the material that that you're giving to them to those keywords. You've got to be ready to be processed in that sort of way. It's a different world.
I would add two things. One is that if you're in that situation where your resume is at the keyword level, the odds in this market of getting all the way to the interview and the ultimate job offer are incredibly small. I mean, the numbers are just lousy. So you ought to think of, the networking has become such a cliche, and I hate that word, but it's absolutely true. I mean, how many people do you know, especially these days, who got a job because they sent in a blind resume? No.
Oh, wait, I know. Roland. Didn't that happen to you? Yeah, Roland, our shooter, producer extraordinaire.
Really?
But he's the one.
He hit a bullseye, huh?
He did. He was
Wow.
unbelievable. We were just talking about
Roland's
this.
resume on the site.
No, I'm seriously. We were
It's
just talking
fabulous.
about how people got jobs, and Sally, who's also works with on our team, came in through connections, and
Yeah.
it was very interesting to kind of hear the difference. We were just talking about this last week, and how had you come into the organization, and it is different. But should you, to Jack's point, you got to do both? No.
Yeah, well, you might as well try the other one. What the heck? I
Sure.
mean, just because it's a long shot doesn't mean you don't do it. It's not expensive to email your resume. I'm just saying that people who are out of work, at home, on the computer, because they spend 6 hours sending out their resume to job. They shouldn't think, okay, so I did my job search
I'm all
for
done.
today.
I'm
yeah.
done.
No,
Yeah.
that's just something that you do like you have to eat meals occasionally. The real work is getting in touch with that person who you were nice to 6 years ago in some old job, finding out where he or she is now and who do they know, and it's just this constant game of that, and that's how ultimately. And going on job interviews you don't want, to practice your skills at interviewing, and because 4 years from now that guy is in somewhere different and he hires you for that job that you really want.
You want to go through the proper channels that they've laid out to demonstrate that you can follow simple directions and do your thing. But you always want to, whenever possible, you should have some sort of network connection to back that up. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's going to be the difference maker at the end of the day.
And one more thing on the tech issue. I mean, we talked about resumes, but there's also social networking and your whole presence online. We've got some great articles on MoneyWatch.com, 5 things never to put on Facebook. And then Mike Zimmerman, you can search Zimmerman and Facebook, and he did a great story about these people who've had stuff on somebody else's Facebook page, got tagged in a photo, and they lost their jobs as a result. So, I mean, some of them are pretty funny. The cop who went to the bikini car wash with his cruiser, obviously he's out.
Is there something wrong with that?
But there are others that are less, more likely to have happened, things in a past life, and boom, you're done. So worry about that. Worry about what you're putting out on Twitter. Some obnoxious observation that can come back to bite you 6 months from now.
Think of Gilbert Gottfried and his...
Yes, exactly. Here's a question from Ariana, who says she works in a lousy job paying at below market wages.
So it's not Huffington.
No.
I guess writing
No, hers is very well paying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
She says she just went for an interview and it went very well, and the potential employer asked for her current pay stub.
Ooh.
Pay stub, not just how much do you make. And Ariana wants to know, are employers asking for pay stubs? What do I tell them? What do I do? Is this legal? What's the situation?
I believe it's legal to ask for a pay stub. I'm not a lawyer. I think that you might want to check with your legal representative to get that. But I do believe that's permissible. What you've got to focus on is what you're worth now. I mean, that's always got to be the focus of these things. When people ask, "What are you making now?"
Yeah.
Well, look, I want to make X.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Well, what are you making now? Well, we can talk about that. I'm not sure how that relates to this conversation, because really my target here is, and I've done the research. She says she's below market.
She sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, she should keep in mind, if she, first of all, I think she's got to comply. Look, you want this job. I don't like this requirement, this ask from the potential employer, but is it worth not getting this job?
Yeah, I would just give it. I would say, you know what? This is it. I had to take a crap job because, I figured I want to be busy and useful and honing my skills and do this, and so I can be better prepared to get my doubling of salary.
But keep in mind, what else did she get a bonus? Are there good benefits from this other company that's not reflected in the paycheck? Is she doing freelance work to make ends meet, and she's going to say to this new employer, I've got this side gig that I want to come work for you and give up,
right?
So I can give you my full attention.
That's a good point. Right. Very good point. Allison says she's been in HR for many years. By the way, HR people, I don't know how you do it. Bless your hearts. It's hard, and basically you're a shrink. Anyway, she says she's been at both the executive level and the generalist level, but I'm looking to transfer my skills to a new job outside of HR. Don't know what that job will be, but we'll know it when I read the job description. It's kind of like dating. How do I take all of my experience and drive it to a new career on my resume? Well, considering she doesn't know what she wants to do, it's kind of hard. Where do HR people go?
Well, first of all, let's just get one thing out of the way real quick, and I'm sorry to say this.
Yes.
But I'm going to let people in on a little secret. HR doesn't have a great reputation. HR is the brunt of jokes by everyone who's not in HR. So this is a problem that she's got to deal with. It's going to help her in the HR interview, but when she gets to talking to the manager who's going to hire her, this is going to be a prejudice in his or her head. And they're not going to, this person's not going to come out and say it, but she's got to figure out how she's going to get around that problem. People think people in HR don't do anything.
Right.
So she's got to really figure out what it is she brings to the table that some manager in a different division is going to be interested
Okay, I
in
have
having.
a great idea for her, but it's completely esoteric. But it is the only idea that popped into my head. What if she goes to any major league firm in the universe and goes to the employment law division? Like any of these big companies have employment. Say, I can be like a paralegal. I know the stuff. I can do your grunt work and get your foot in the door there and be on that path. Because, not everybody who works in a law firm or in big organizations in the legal or compliance department is a lawyer. And maybe there's a way to transfer that skill. I don't know. What do you think?
Right. It's about the transferable skills. I'm hearing somebody who needs to focus in on transferable skills. I'm hearing somebody who probably needs to think once again about some of the target companies to think about, and also somebody who should keep in mind that a huge leap from one competency to another is very hard to pull off. If you could bring your HR experience into one company that you really wanted to be part of and make a lateral shift, and then move forward, that's always easier.
It's a good move. That's a good smart
true.
move. You get the trust of the organization rather than having to get both
at once.
Okay, here's a great question from Erica in Ohio. Okay, 23 years old. Been with the company for a whopping 7 months, but hello, it's a job. And she says, I love my job. I see my career path here, but I am having trouble with interpersonal communications in the workforce. I do not want to come across as naive or ignorant when talking to superiors, as I'm hoping to call them my peers in the near future. But however, she must feel like saying at a meeting, like, you're an ass. What are you talking about? What are your recommendations when approaching superiors or joining into their conversations? Do you know any additional resources where I can get training on this? It's hard to be 23, bless her heart. I never want to go back.
I remember getting thrown into the Shark Tank myself. It is a different world. I mean, you're moving from a position where you've been sort of you've been a student, and now you're supposed to be a colleague. Additional resources. I mean, most companies I know will offer some training.
I think mentoring. I think if you have a formal mentoring program in your organization, maybe even if you don't, you can say, hey, I'm young and I want to get better. Maybe we should start a mentoring program, boss. And wouldn't that be cool? And I think those are great because you know what? Mentoring doesn't happen anymore. Everyone's too freaked out about losing their own jobs. But it's a very fulfilling thing. My girlfriend was mentoring and she said it was like one of the best experiences in the last 2 years was to really work with somebody younger in the organization and to really feel like you helped. You really help somebody come up.
I think she's asking a very nice question. I don't think it's a question that people are going to take amiss in her company. I want to be a better employee here. I want to work with you. Sure. With you better, and I'm enthusiastic about my colleagues, and I want to communicate. So if you find those people, mentors are very valuable.
Well, one thing I would recommend, it sounds like this might be a little bit of a euphemism for, as you said, she thinks these people are idiots or that they're communicating badly or something like that. And I would say she's got to learn to speak their language first and then convince them using their language that there's a better way to do things. So because she can't help the fact that they look at her and they think, we're more important here than you are. Why are we listening to you?
Right.
So she's got to come in from them, not be too, not coming like an outsider.
Right, and learn the system.
Right,
right,
and
absolutely.
then work from within.
Here's another young graduate, a master's degree in 2003, and only worked in a related field for 5 months before leaving journalism market. How wise. My circumstances have changed since then. I want to use my journalism degree and list it on my resume to get a first look. I don't really know what that means. I feel like he got a master's degree, or she, I'm not sure, in 2003 in journalism, worked in the field for 5 months, left it, but maybe not in journalism anymore, still lists the degree. I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
You worked hard for that.
Sure. I mean, anything that demonstrates that you've got in the simplest terms, showing that you've got the stick-to-itiveness to get an advanced degree
Right.
is worth listing.
And this all comes back to your narrative. You figure out what the skills are you were taught in journalism school that are going to help you with this job. You want to be a bond trader, you're going to explain that you have investigative skills. They're going to get you that company that has distressed debt that you're going to buy cheaper.
Yeah, you know how to do research and your diligence, and you have follow through. It's awesome.
Yeah, whatever the skill is you want for the new job, explain how this journalism degree is going to get you there.
Okay, question now. Kimberly is also very young. I started a great job last year. I love the work I'm doing, and the business is growing. However, I think I lowballed my starting salary by asking for too little. Is there anything to do to rectify my salary, or do I have to move to another company to increase my salary?
Well, we don't have the information on what kind of a review structure there is. I mean, if there's a trigger point where there's a new account or there's a change in title, I mean, those are the sort of occasions where you can initiate that sort of conversation. I mean, if it's steady as she goes, it's a little bit hard then to say, I think I made a mistake.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. And this is not the economy where you can, I think just plan for the next time there's an opening and push it as far as you can.
You know what's interesting? We have a lot of folks in the chat room. Again, we're at MoneyWatch.com, and we're going to be closing this up, but you can actually get a rebroadcast of this. We're going to send this around. We'll have the link up. I'll put it in the blog post. But it's so interesting because there's Nicole's saying regarding an advanced degree. Nicole says any degree can be made to fit anything. It's not the title, it's what you've learned. Mm-hmm. But then George says, be careful. These advanced degrees can work against you if they make you appear overqualified. Right?
Luckily, in this case, it's journalism, and nobody has ever accused a journalist of being overqualified.
Exactly. And, and it is good. I think that there's an important thing to sort of say, look, I can't always connect the dots. I think that you can also say, I was freaking desperate. I took this job and I did this thing because I really wanted to hustle. That's what I became a dog walker because I'd rather do that than live on unemployment. I'll tell you something. I remember interviewing someone when I first got to Rhode Island and I started this investment advisory firm. And a lot of times I would get sort of the MBA, the recent MBA who really hadn't done anything. And I knew that the guy or the gal was smart. But, there was that somewhat of an entitlement. Like, I went and got my MBA, so therefore I can actually run a company. And I never forgot that there was a guy who walked into my office and said, I have sold cars for 2 years. I know how to talk to people. I don't know anything about financial services. I really want to get into it. I will do anything here, but I know how to sell. I'm like, hired. You're hired, because there was a grittiness to that that's real. I mean, I'm not saying every employer is going to do that, but there's something pretty appealing about someone who is going to roll up his or her sleeves and do whatever you have to do to move through this period.
It's extremely compelling. It's very compelling. Bring that stuff up front and bring that passion up front. And that once again, that you're bringing value. Right.
And right now, look ahead and say, okay, I need to tell this story in an interview. I don't have the story yet. So whether you're unemployed and you go change the bookkeeping system for your kid's school, or whether you have a job you hate, and so you want to go do something so that when you walk into that interview, you have the story to tell.
Absolutely.
That's the great thing. You can create your own story.
Yeah, right. and there's no reason why you have to feel embarrassed about anything. Honestly, I think that this recession should hopefully have cured everybody of that, right?
Yeah.
All right, now, I think we got to close up because A, my computer battery is dying, and B, Megan's like, well, you're talking too much. So here's the deal. It is still going to be a crappy job market for a while. Jack, when's it going to get better?
Oh, gosh, 2017.
Yeah, come on. That's so bad. If you're looking for a job, the best thing that let's each do a pearl of wisdom for people who are out there and they're looking. Okay? Especially if you don't. If you have a job, I want you, and it's a sucky job, I understand you want to get out, but you have a job. But if you don't have a job, how about a pearl of wisdom?
Okay.
Matthew, give a pearl of wisdom.
You are uniquely valuable in being an information broker. When you're out there looking for a job, take every bit of intelligence that you can gather as you talk to these different employers and as you network. You are a special breed, and people are going to want to talk to you because everybody's worried about the job market and the economy. And you're going to be in demand in conversation if you can tell that story and explain to them what's up.
Jack?
I would say have lunch twice every week with somebody who's in a position to know somebody who knows somebody who gives jobs. So force yourself to do that human contact, because that's how most jobs actually get bestowed upon lucky people. But you create your own luck by getting out there. I had lunch today, not with an editor, by the way, not someone I'm looking for a job from.
Interesting.
A guy who is outstanding at this. And as we talked, and he's not a name dropper, but he would just talk about this guy he worked with and his conversation with Graydon Carter, which is name dropping in our business, and a bunch of other people. And this guy is so good at it that he's never has to worry, because he's always got 20 people he can call on in a second, all of whom he has done favors for in the past. So start that process today.
And I would say that have a system in place to do this. So I, by the way, would say you must have lunch with people who can pay for you. That's another good thing, especially if you're out of work.
Sure.
I would have a system in place. I'm all about systems always. So, what are you trying to do? I want to get this job. And so whether it's I'm going to do 2 lunches a week, or I'm going to do this many calls, I break it down to the sales process. How many calls do I have to make? What's my closing ratio? What do I have to do? And I work backwards. I create a really, really nice, big, fat spreadsheet, track every single person you speak to, and keep some sort of system in place to be in touch with them. And it doesn't mean you have to completely make yourself ridiculously annoying, because being on the other side of that, sometimes I'm like, okay, slow down there, Turbo. You're not making your case right now. But at some periodic base, maybe it's once a month, and to know, things do change, stay in front of people, but have a system in place so you can, your job right now is to get a job. Treat that job search like a job. That's it. You're down with that. Okay, by the way, we got scolded. This should have been an hour. I thought it's been an hour. And Megan said, actually this show is 30 minutes, so everyone slow down. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to have Matthew back. We love Matthew. Jack and I will be back. This is Ask the Experts on MoneyWatch.com, and we promise we'll keep talking about this. We know this is a huge issue. We want to hear from you. If you've got suggestions or you have specific questions, we're going to do another show like this probably about a month from now, when around the next jobs report. And we want to thank you so much, actually, for watching and participating. The chat room has been wild.
Wonderful.
It's all about you, Matthew. Amazing. And you too, Jack. Okay, so Matthew Rothenberg's blog, what's it called? Career Management.
Career management, yeah.
Career management blogger.
Says it all.
Exactly. Careermanagement.com. No, careermanagement at MoneyWatch.com. And Jack Otter is, you don't really write that much under your own.
No, I should do it more.
You do that in your free time.
System. Yeah, got to create a spreadsheet.
Yeah, you know what? But anyway, Jack runs the show here. So Jack Otter, executive editor of MoneyWatch.com. Phew, oh my God, I finally got your title right. Wow. I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor at large. Thank you so much for watching. And go to MoneyWatch.com, and I'll post this. I'll embed this video of this so you guys have it on my blog, Jill on Money. So we'll do that later. I don't know. It depends how busy Roland is. Let's see what happens. Maybe later tonight, but definitely tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching.